Hey everyone, welcome back. Kevin Kramer here, founder of dauntingcoloring.com and creator of this three-part video training series for you on shading masters. Now, in the first video, I taught you the two key concepts of using size and a grid system to really achieve amazing results and get extreme amounts of detail with less stress and no added skill. And I use those two approaches each and every time on all of my portraits and all of my drawings. They're the first step in every one. And I also gave you the 3 space-saving tips I use when I have limited space to work, no studio, and I showed you that it takes really no more time to use the gridding method to really plan out your proportions and get everything right. In this second video, I'm gonna teach you my 4-step process for shading like a pro every single time. The 4 steps really break down the strategies that I use to draw all of my images just using only a few tools. I also am going to tell you the 3 things that hold most people back from making their own creative and original artwork and how you can sidestep them. Drawing realistic portraits has always been a passion of mine ever since I found Norman Rockwell's work, and it took me many years of practice and trial and error to figure out and perfect how to achieve amazing realistic images. And the strategies I'm teaching you, they enabled me to draw any image with confidence, extreme amounts of realism, and win contests that have gotten my work published in books like Strokes of Genius 3, The Best of Drawing, and the 2011 collection of Art Buzz, both of which been distributed around the world. I don't say that to impress you, but to let you know what's really possible when you use these techniques I'm showing you. I do have to assume that you're willing to put in the work to get better with your art, but like I said before, it only takes one technique to really take your skills to new heights. So if you haven't had a chance to watch the first video, I highly suggest you go back and watch it and come back to this one. It's the foundation for everything that I do. Once you have the outline drawn, the next thing you need to do is obviously fill in the shading and the tone. It's not all that hard if you follow a few simple steps and just kind of keep with those. Again, it really comes down to planning out your images. The more you plan, the better your images will come out. The hardest aspect of drawing for me started off when it was contrast. Adding more contrast was one of the scariest things that I had to overcome that helped bring my drawings to just new levels. I struggled with not going dark enough for a long time. I didn't want to go, I didn't want to ruin the picture. I didn't want to mess it up or not have to erase. Even when I had something that looked really awesome, I didn't want to mess it up. Maybe you can relate. One day I finished an image that I was actually really satisfied with, and I decided to go ahead and just, push it further, push myself further, push it further, and actually risk ruining the whole thing. And I filled in the darkest darks, darker than I originally had, and while it wasn't the best outcome, I got a taste of what I knew I really needed to do from now on. From that, I developed the new shading approach that I use in all of my images. There are 4 steps to shading like a pro that I use every single time. Step 1 is find the highlights. When drawing any image, the first rule is determine the light source that you're trying to depict. And locating the highlights will allow you to do that without even thinking. If you just go and find the highlights and outline them lightly and then just leave them untouched, then you'll have almost everything already laid out for you. Step 2 is fill in the midtones. Once you have the highlights all plotted out and defined, fill in all the other parts of the outline, including the darkest shadows, using a middle value, just kind of a base tone. This will give you a good base to work off of and allows you to judge how dark or light you're actually going later on. I know a lot of people struggle with everything looks flat. This is going to help. Rule number 3 is make the darkest darks a value darker than you originally thought. This will give your drawing immediate impact, and the contrast, it'll just really make your image pop. That's where the contrast will come from. The main step I got hung up on is that one when I was getting started. I didn't go dark enough. Step 4 is make the lights lighter than you think. The highlights will give your image that extra depth that they're missing, and even if the darks are all filled in, there's no distinguishable highlights, the image will look flat. So go ahead, add the highlights in, and it'll really bring out that depth and that dimension that your images are missing. So if you follow those 4 steps when you're drawing your images, you'll see instant results. They'll have more impact and dimension, and you'll never be afraid to go darker again. Believe it or not, the more you can simplify the tones and the value, the more impact your drawings will have. So if you can divide them up into 3 very distinguishable tones, you'll have a lot more depth and impact in any of your drawings that you make. Like I taught you in the first video, size dictates everything as far as the ease of adding details to your images, and the grid system allows you to have precision accuracy. Those 2 ideas and concepts took me a while to finally get. Once I started reading the bios and really digging deeper into the actual processes and the history of each artist, I started to bring it all together and saw some common themes, and that really started to gel. Artists like Rockwell to Alphonse Mucha to all the great masters, all of their images were so much bigger than I realized. I couldn't even understand how they made the paper so big. It just never even occurred to me. I can even remember going to an art store in New Orleans when I was really young with my dad and just looking through all the tools and supplies. I didn't even think about the paper. Paper and paper size never even came onto my radar until much, much later. It was really ridiculous looking back at it now, but I would take 4 pieces of paper, paste them together, and then I'd meet in the middle, and then I'd just tape those together in the middle. It was pretty nuts. All I was interested in were the how-to books and the ones with the most pictures in them. The only reason I picked up the individual artist books was to look at the pictures. All of the books really did help me a lot with creating the images and finding different styles that I liked, but I can tell you, building skills without solid foundation of theory in the process to tell you why you're actually doing what you are doing will definitely lead you down a rabbit hole of frustration, and you have to build that first. One of the biggest things I learned over time is that all art is structured. It has rules, and it's the best artists that learn the rules and master them. Only once you've mastered the rules of a process do you have the knowledge of how to effectively break those rules. I think most people would agree. You can't know how to break something unless you know how it works. That's part of why I love the gridding method. It's a structure that you can lay all of your framework on. It's a guide to help you focus on your composition, building skills, and mastering the rules of building your art. When I found Chuck Close's work, the images were so impressive, I had to see what his process was. It was just, I had to know how is he making those images. And that's when the idea of the gridding system really took full effect, and I saw it. Before, I used a projector and I drew things out freehand, but it was using the grid system that really, just learning to frame up my pictures in general, that got me started and allowed me to get mentally prepared and approach the drawing methodically and with purpose. So I could just kind of laser focus and have a purpose every time I sat down. And I do that with all of my sketches. I do that with all of my main pieces. And I first learned to use an overhead projector in high school, and that kind of started that trend. And I created my compositions and all the pieces. And I created my first fully realized piece for Black History Month. It was a composition of B.B. King, and I was creating a unique composition. It still always kind of felt like I was cheating, because I was projecting it, and most people think that that's cheating. But in any case, it wasn't the process. It was the size that really stuck with me and helped me realize the impact of that picture that I created. It actually looked like real art. It was the size of real art. And when you up the size of your final piece, it allows you to get more fluid action, cleaner lines, and you can add as much or a little as detail as you want, whether you're drawing a landscape, a puppy dog, or B.B. King. It doesn't matter. Now, I do realize that some people think that using grids and drawing realistic portraits from images is just too structured or mechanical, and all you're doing is slavishly copying like some human photocopier. And they also think the images are unoriginal and not really organic. And I would agree with some of it, but there are 3 simple things you could do to just completely sidestep all of those complaints and worries and you really make your art your own. First thing that I would suggest and always encourage that you do is to always draw from original images or subjects that you personally have created or taken. It not only allows you to create original artwork, it helps you avoid any copyright infringements that could maybe come up later on if you try to enter into a contest, or any kind of galleries will mandatory that you have original work. They won't accept copies or recreations. All contests will require that you have original work anyway. So why not just go ahead and create your own images if you really want to practice and create. Taking pictures of source images and reference photos for use in your final drawings or sketches has been a part of the process since cameras became more accessible. And today, great cameras are even ridiculously cheap. You can, more than likely, your camera on your camera on your phone is better than the camera that I used to shoot the reference images for my signature Big Alex piece. Even Norman Rockwell used them almost exclusively to get his paintings completed. He said he had a horrible imagination and needed to see exactly what it would look like in order to draw it. Second is how you choose to render your image. To me, it's like giving 20 kids the same page out of a coloring book. Everyone starts with the same outline, but no two look alike when they're all done. As far as too structured or mechanical, the only thing structured with the process I use is the grid itself. You can draw a sketchy image, you can draw a hyper-realistic image, you can draw an average image. It's really up to you how you want to draw anything once you get it on there. The grid is just there to support that idea as the underlying framework for you. The image you're drawing is organic and still drawn freehand, meaning you're not using tools or anything else to do it. So I don't see any problem with taking source images and reference photos for use in your main drawing or piece of artwork. You know, that anything you use personally is yours. Ultimately, it's your choice of how you want to depict that image. That's the ultimate job of the artist anyway. It's your eyes showing what you see onto the paper. So any artwork you choose to make can be considered uninspired or mechanical. The key is to make it your own. And if you want to create a photorealistic image, there's still other elements that go into creating a drawing besides slavishly copying. Each artist's touch is different, and it comes through in your subjects that you choose, whether you're painting, drawing, or even sculpting. Your touch, your personality comes through whether you want to or not. Chuck Close's subjects are all really very generic and unflattering, and more often look like ID photos if they're not directly from that. But the enormous size and hyper-realistic style of them commands your attention when you see them in person. And they were made using an airbrush. So whatever medium you choose, it will add another layer of personality to your work. A quote I like is from one of the great artists and great teachers, Andrew Loomis, which says, "The early work of any artist known for breadth and looseness usually shows that he had to master detail before he could subordinate and eliminate it." Basically, you have to know how to see and get great levels of detail in order to know when and where they're not needed and where they're needed. And the third thing is, any image you create will show your own style or aesthetic. This is the one that evolves over time. It's hard to pinpoint it, but as you find other artists that inspire you, you'll take on some of their style and aesthetic. You might do it consciously or you might do it unconsciously, but the more that you're exposed, the greater the chances that your art will evolve and become a unique expression of your own style. It really just takes time to develop. You have to just keep going, doing it, and then you'll get your own style. And I think the style that you gravitate towards anyway is really an expression of your own personal state, whether you consciously know it or actively pursue an idea. I remember when I created the Big Alex piece, there was a lot of craziness going on in my life, and it really allowed me to channel that chaos into something constructive. And it allowed me to have a little bit of control over a little aspect of the day. You know, I could just sit down, get in there, and I had control over that. Since then, my work has become a lot more loose over time, but you know, I still create very realistic images, as you know. So I just like them. I use duller pencils and sketchier lines than some other artists. You know, some use all mechanical pencils, which give them like a more graphic style, while others use, you know, only charcoal or even a combination of different materials. But it's really ultimately up to you, the artist, how you want to approach the subject once you have the image planned out and the grid is laid down. You know, the grid and the size just help give you more real estate to get your ideas down and get them down cleanly so that you can work on your style and building your skills. Now, I hope that this video has really served you, and I know that these videos are probably a little longer than you're used to, but I hope it has really demystified and added some value to you in this process, and you know, has really shown you how you can draw amazingly realistic portraits like a pro and with confidence, and really be proud of the outcomes that you're achieving. You know, I know that if you really take these strategies and put them into play in your own drawings and artwork, then you put the time in, you'll get better, you keep practicing, you'll see huge impacts just like I did. You will achieve high levels of detail and mastery, and you'll be creating real art if you just use these techniques. Your confidence level soars when you know exactly what you need to do to achieve any outcome. And you know, having a system that you use to approach those problems really takes the worry out, and it allows you to laser focus your efforts in the right place. If you don't have a starting point, you'll be struggling the entire way through all of your pieces. So the grid really does that, and I know that these strategies work because I use them on all of my images that I create. And the 4-step process simplifies all of my shading. So in the next video, I'll talk to you even more about the #1 challenges people face in doing this. You've been struggling long enough. Just let's help you get those portraits and drawings up to the level of detail and quality that you really want, and build the confidence that I know that you can really draw, so that you know you can really draw anything you want with skill, and have it look as real as you decide you want it to look, not how it just might happen to come out. So I look forward to see you in the next video, but until then, enter any comments or questions below this video, and I'll do my best personally to respond to each and every one of them. So go ahead, enter them now, and I'll see you in the next video. And just go out there and remember, just keep it simple.